Breaking the gray.
Sarah, it's great to see you. You're wearing a different color today. You're wearing yellow, which makes me happy. It's a happy color.
It's a happy color, yes. Yeah, bringing a bit of sunshine to rainy England.
That's good. That's good. I decided to go away from the blues today and go with black. So still the darker shades, but I'm wearing black today. So it's nice that, Sarah, you mentioned it's raining and it's getting a little colder, right? In your homeland. Mine too. It's cold here too.
Yes, well, it's good to embrace the cold. I mean, we've had episodes about the cold, it's all good. It's about kind of experiencing those natural cycles. So embrace it, Russ. Embrace the cold over
Yes,
there. Go out without your big hoodie on.
I try to. But I like the cold. I'm not a heat person. The cold is much better. I'm good with the cold. It's probably my Eastern European blood. When I do my 23andMe, I'm 49% Eastern European. So I guess I'm used to it. The heat, not so much. So Sarah, today's guest, this season's been interesting. We've talked about mushrooms. We've talked about diet. We've talked about parasites. We're going to focus today on the gut again, I think, right? That's our area. And we have an expert here.
I'm really happy to welcome Biohacking Brittany, actually by popular demand, because Brittany, we've never met before. Aww. But lots of people, they know we do a biohacking podcast, and people often ask, are you going to interview Biohacking Brittany? So I'm super excited you agreed to come on. It's been a little bit of time before we kind of agreed that. So it's really nice to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so cute that people want me to come on.
Well, I think you have a really good social media, and you have really good stuff going on Instagram, really good information. So, I think that's, people love to see that. So yeah, it's super cool to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So Brittany, what is it that you are bringing to our show today? I know Sarah and I have talked a little bit about your expertise, but I'd love to sort of understand it so our audience can understand what is the area of the body you really specialize in.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like it's changed as my own health issues have changed. You kind of dive into what speaks to you personally and like how you want to heal. So my own health journey started with leaky gut, and I had a bunch of issues around that. But then over time, it kind of transformed into like women's health issues and hormones. And so that's kind of where I am now. And that's kind of, I guess, what I speak to my audience a lot about on my podcast is menstrual cycle syncing, getting into fertility soon as well. And really, I mean, this is to come and not right now, but definitely looking into like biohacking pregnancy and babies and things like that is like very soon coming. So, it really just follows my own health journey. And I just like speak very openly and honestly about what I've dealt with and like what's worked for me and what hasn't. And I think that's kind of how people relate it's just like the authenticity.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome to get into a lot of those. I have 3 daughters that, they listen to the podcast and they're always like, Dad, this has really helped me. And I'm like, I know, me too. At least I understand. I get it. But what is leaky gut? Like, how it sounds awful.
Yeah. So I think leaky gut has really gained popularity, which is in terms of like understanding what it is, which is great. But it's still like when you hear that, it sounds kind of gross almost and weird. But essentially, the gut lining that we have has like tiny little holes in it. And that's natural and that's normal. But it's when we have too many holes or the holes get too large is when you get something called leaky gut syndrome. Essentially, it's like intestinal permeability, like there's issues with that. And so what happens is, this is like how I explain it here on camera. It's like, if this is your gut lining here, like there's little holes like this that start happening and they get larger and larger, and there's more. And then nutrients from our food actually seep through those holes and get into our bloodstream. And that causes inflammation and causes a bunch of other issues. So when we look at leaky gut, there's a bunch of different ways that I guess you could heal it, but ultimately you do need to close those holes, because otherwise you're still like the nutrients are still seeping through and you're not absorbing your food properly. So that's really where I recommend people start, is like, let's actually talk about the lining and how we can fix that itself.
And so it's not it's bottom of gut, not top of gut. So top of gut more of the esophageal stuff, but it's more bottom of gut issues and intestinal issues. Okay. So does it cure itself? Is it fixable, or is it something that you need surgery for?
Yeah. So it's definitely fixable. There's certain like supplements you can take or food that you can take. One of my favorite recommendations for people is actually aloe vera juice for it. So if we think about aloe vera, when we put it on our skin, when we have like a sunburn or anything like that, it really helps the skin to heal faster, reduce scar tissue, that type of thing. And when you drink aloe vera juice in its like actual raw, organic, natural form, it does very similar things for the lining of our intestines and of our gut. And so the L-glutamine, actually, the amino acid that's in aloe vera juice, is really what does that. But some people just take L-glutamine powder, which is also helpful, but I like kind of the holistic view of it because I think there's more benefits in that way. So I really just recommend people start with aloe vera juice, and every morning on an empty stomach, and like see how that goes. But obviously, like, that's just one thing. Like, you really have to look at stress and your diet and alcohol consumption and other things like that. Like, you can't just take one supplement and call it a day. Like, you really have to biohack your gut in a sense.
And how do you know if you have it? So what are some of the signs that you've got it?
I think it shows up differently for everybody. So for me, when I first started dealing with this, like, I was a teenager, and this was before wellness was like a thing, or before gut health was trending or anything like that. And I started having really weird symptoms, and I went to my Western doctor, and she was like, nothing's wrong with you. She did blood work and nothing was wrong. But my hair was falling out. I was like struggling concentrating in school, and my skin was okay, but like it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And also, when you're 16, like, your hair shouldn't be falling out. It shouldn't be thinning at the age of 16, especially for women. Like, that's very, very young. And so I went to a naturopath and I started getting tested, and we started looking at my blood, and we started seeing a ton of undigested protein that was in my blood. And she was like, yeah, you have leaky gut because this is literally seeping through the holes and you're not absorbing your food. So that's kind of how it all started. And for me, that's how it showed up. But it really can show up differently for different people.
I'm always fascinated by finding out more about the gut. I don't know, Sarah, you and I've talked about this so much, but gut health is so important. And it does. I mean, Sarah, you've talked about the gut-brain connection, right?
Yes, and that's what it's quite interesting, because it's interesting that you said, Brittany, that you're kind of following your own health journey. And as you started off with leaky gut, now you're looking at the more hormonal things, because we're kind of also trying to think of, like, there's a hierarchy to dealing with your health. And this is something that we've been trying to get over on the last season of the podcast, is that, you need to know where to start. So we often talk to people and say, right, the first thing you need to do is sleep. Then you need to maybe, my thing is light, so look at your light. I would suggest then the next thing is to look at your gut. And it seems like, it's kind of a weak link for a lot of people. And until you address your gut, it's difficult then to address other problems that you may be having. So I wonder if that's kind of the way that you think about it too. It's kind of a fundamental to deal with your gut health as a priority.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this yesterday, actually, in terms of the ultimate root cause to health issues, right? So if we have hormonal imbalance and we say, okay, there's a link here to gut health issues, and then we look at gut health issues and we say, okay, where did this actually start from? Is it the poor diet and the poor lifestyle choices that caused the gut health issues, which then caused the hormonal issues? Or like how granular is it? And I don't necessarily know the answer for this. I'm just saying, like, is it poor mitochondrial health? Like, is that how granular it is, of the mitochondria in our cells are not performing correctly, the cells are in our gut that are not performing correctly, and then it just goes to organs and then hormones? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I I think it's tricky, but I think you're right. Like, I think we should be addressing the root cause before addressing a symptom or before addressing, you know, some sort of hormonal imbalance. And I don't think that you could have balanced hormones if you have poor gut health. Definitely not.
So it seems to sort of be a fundamental, but also like the whole thing of leaky gut, like you say, it wasn't so much of a thing. People weren't talking about it, and now it's everywhere. Although if you go to your medical doctor, I mean, I don't know what it's like in the States, but certainly here, if I went to my doctor and said I've got leaky gut, you know, they say, well, that's not a thing, you know. So although it's something that, you know, in the alternative world, people start to talk about, it's not so much recognized as an actual medical condition. So I think that's why it's difficult for people to know, you know, is that what they've actually got? Or, you know, we talked about, it could be parasites, it could be IBS, you know, there's so many things it could be. How have you kind of dealt with that, you know, to actually find your way through the maze of everything and actually come up with a program that worked for you?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I'm in Canada, and it's just as difficult as I'm sure it is as in the States. But I've really struggled to find like a traditional medical doctor who is open to these types of things. And I think that reflects our poor healthcare system. I think that's like a systemic problem. But on an individual level, I think having a team of practitioners who are not medical doctors is probably the best way to go about it. Now, obviously, it's expensive and there are accessibility issues as well. So I understand how people can kind of struggle because maybe they can't afford to see a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath or these things that are out of pocket. So luckily we're at a point now though with wellness and even leaky gut where there are books on it and there's podcasts and there's information online. And I think that's really, really valuable and a great place for people to start. The only issue with that type of thing is it can educate you, and it's really important to be self-educated in this space because then you can go to your doctor and be like, okay, I understand X, Y, and Z, and I can explain it to you. But without having a practitioner who can really help you, you're kind of just taking these protocols and these ideas and applying them to yourself without the bio individuality that is needed. So that's why when you see like a functional medicine doctor, they'll run labs and they'll run tests and they'll look at your diet and your lifestyle and your exercise. And then they'll be like, okay, for you, this is what I recommend. Even though your book might say this thing works for everybody, that doesn't work for you because you're different in this way. So I think if anyone's listening and they're thinking they have gut health issues, I would start with educating yourself, obviously in different ways. And then I would really try and find an expert who can help you individually, because I think that's really going to move the needle more than any one book or anything will.
Yeah, are there markers or like measurement that when you actually do go to the doctor and they do tests, are there things that show up on tests that you can at least see or quantify for yourself? Obviously, biohackers love to quantify for themselves. Like, are there things that you can actually test and get some baselines for?
Yeah, so I think if we're just talking about gut health and leaky gut, I think doing the Viome test is fantastic. Viome is like an at-home test that you do. They test your oral gut microbiomes and also your blood markers. And so they actually have a metric on there for leaky gut, and they'll show you like you have problems with your intestinal lining. Here's what we recommend. So when I first got tested, however many years ago, there was no Viome, so I wasn't able to do that. But this is great now because it's an at-home test and anyone can do it. So it really does help.
Is that, and how is that spelled? Is that with a V or a B?
It's a V, Viome.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you did do a test and found out that you had proteins.
Yeah.
Circulating proteins. So you kind of had an idea for that. And then you did your aloe vera. Presumably you drank that daily, which I salute you if you did that because it's horrible tasting, isn't it? Or did you find a way to make it palatable?
That's so funny. I actually don't find the taste too bad. But I also feel like I drink a lot of like Chinese herbs and like really, really bitter tonics. So a little aloe vera juice in the morning is actually like pretty refreshing.
I did it for a while. I did the aloe vera, and I was getting my mum to do it. And I realized that my mum was kind of even making herself late for work because she was refusing to get up so that she didn't have to drink the juice. But I'm sure there are brands which are more palatable. But I totally agree with you. You know, that's definitely one of the things that is very healing. So how did you kind of progress from that? You know, you started with the aloe vera. What was the rest of the journey to kind of get there? Because now you've kind of taken that on as your thing is biohacking, right? That's kind of the journey you've gone down yourself.
Yeah. So at the time when I was healing my gut, I had to really change my diet. So I went more into like a paleo time of my life. Mind you, I was still drinking a lot of alcohol back then. So paleo with alcohol, like, you know, but it was still better than what I was doing before. And again, I was a teenager at the time and it did help. So paleo plus aloe vera juice, and exercise lifestyle and other supplements was really, really what helped a lot. And then, you know, fast forward, I studied nutrition. I went back to school, studied nutrition. And then I found biohacking. And it really spoke to me because even though I am a holistic nutritionist, and I think nutrition is such a key player in your health, it felt like it wasn't enough to really get you to an optimal, healthy state. So, as much as I love like recommending foods or making meal plans or recipes or things like that, like it just didn't feel like it was enough. Like we need to look at sleep and we need to look at light and we need to look at our lifestyle and toxins in our environment and our air and all of these different things. And that's how I kind of found biohacking. It was a few years ago now and just kind of ran with it. And so it's fun to be in the biohacking space because it's grown so much in the last 3 years, I would say. But there's no way that it's mainstream yet, or you know, the average person knows what biohacking is. So it's cool to still be like an early adopter.
Great. And kind of what's your protocol now? Because, you know, now that you've kind of moved on from it, I know you said you're focusing more on your hormones now. What's your kind of day look like now?
Wow. Right now, I work a lot, probably more than I should, but it's not always going to be this way. Um, yeah, right now I'm in this weird, I don't even know if I've like said this publicly, but I'm in this weird space of I'm 29 and I don't want kids right now, but I know that that's something that I'm looking at in about a year. And so now my focus is like really shifted to how can I prepare my body for that time in my life in terms of like preconception nutrition, preconception health. And honestly, I don't see a lot of people talking about that. Like I see people talking about fertility struggles, but I don't see people talking about the period of time before you start trying. And so that's kind of this year that I'm in right now. And I'm going to really produce a lot of content for next year is really helping women understand this time because this is when you detox, right? This is when the male needs to detox as well. And so I've just been kind of studying up on this and looking further into it because I just find it really fascinating. And if you're going to, you know, create a baby, you might as well create the healthiest baby that you can. And with the healthiest sperm, the healthiest womb, obviously you have your eggs from when you're born, but you can still make the environment around the eggs as healthy as possible. So that's kind of where I'm looking at. And my day to day right now is it's thinking about that bigger life goal, I would say.
I have 4 children, and I think about. I mean, it is a really interesting topic. My sister just had a baby. She had trouble getting pregnant. She is late 30s, and really struggled through her 30s with it. And healthy lifestyle is such an important thing. I think it is important to note that, like, I don't know if men actually care or take responsibility for their health and do that. And I think when it comes to fertility issues and going in and looking at things like sperm count, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm responsible for this. Like, I think there is a really I mean, it's an amazing topic, and I you're right. I don't think anyone is actually capturing it. So when you're ready to launch that that show, come back on and we can talk to it. I can only come at it from a father's perspective, and I'm sure, Sarah, you're probably interested as well. But I do wonder, Brittany, you said something about alcohol, and I wanted to go back to it really quickly because I think it does relate here too about detoxing. And how important is it for you to detox off of alcohol, especially with gut issues or preparing yourself for pregnancy? Like, is it important to get alcohol out of your life? Obviously moderation is key, but like, what about detoxing completely?
Oh, there's so much to say here with this one. I think there's two aspects of it. So biologically, when it comes to alcohol, the liver has to detox that, right? So alcohol is broken down. There's hormones that can be created when you drink too much alcohol, and it really can impact that like hormonal balance. So if you look at like toxic load on the body, it doesn't make sense to drink alcohol, overburden the liver when the liver's already trying to balance the hormones itself. Like it doesn't make sense to add to it at all, even with like this like sense of balance that we have. So when I think about it, I think like ideally no alcohol, to be honest. But I understand that American society and even like European society, like we drink so much. Like we drink to celebrate, and we drink when we're upset. We drink for every emotion, basically, right? So how do we navigate a world where we choose not to drink alcohol, even if we don't have a problem with alcohol, right? Like you don't have to be a previous alcoholic to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And that's what we're actually seeing now with the sober curious movement. I don't know if you guys have seen any content on this online. It's like people just choosing not to drink anymore because they're like, what's the point? You know? Yeah.
Russ is very smug, Brittany. Russ is very smug because he stopped drinking. He hasn't had.
Oh, okay.
I did.
I haven't. So Russ
and
is
you know
kind
what?
of.
Yeah, it came from a couple of episodes we did on our podcast where it talked about brain health, and Sarah has gotten me so focused on brain health and sleeping and red light in the morning. I put my phone away. I'm trying. That one's hard to kick. But the alcohol part of it numbing the cells in your brain, and like I turned 50 this year, and Sarah and I both are sort of similar ages. I won't age Sarah, but I'll age myself. And like I felt like yeah, Sarah and I both we equal 100. But like that idea of causing so many more problems in your body when I'm already dealing with the fact that like my gut sucks and I've got all these other things going on. That just was another thing that, especially during COVID, where my wife and I were stuck at home and drinking every single night, and we're like, okay, and I'm like, wow, I am not an alcoholic, but I definitely have been drinking too much, you know. And I found though the social stuff is where it gets really hard. But I found that I went to a wedding, I didn't drink, and I mean it was a beautiful wedding, and everybody was drinking incredible wine, and I didn't, and it was not that hard to not. But when everyone got drunk, I was like, wow, I can dance sober, and no one's sitting there looking at me, and I can be just as crazy as I was when I was drinking, and I felt like that was the moment that I could break it. Like I don't need it socially. And I think that's the part where people need to like feel like you don't need something to separate yourself when you're doing the social thing.
Yeah, I think the social thing is hard. I also think in general, like why do we reach for alcohol in the first place is kind of where my head has been in the last 2 years. Like if I've had a stressful day and I want a glass of wine, why do I feel like my life isn't providing enough relief for me that I need relief through a substance? And a lot of people don't want to face that and deal with that. And that's understandable because some people are going through very difficult things, and alcohol is like something that they can rely on to help them. But I just noticed on a Friday night, like there was this like pull to alcohol every single weekend. And I don't want to live a life where like a substance gives me so much like feel good feelings that I don't have in other places. I don't know.
That's a great point. And now we reach for aloe. We're gonna reach for aloe.
Yeah.
You haven't given up your coffee though, Russ. All smug about the alcohol.
Yeah.
Still on the coffee. But how are you finding, Brittany, with like people taking up this message? Because as Russ says, I think it's very well, especially the fertility thing, people do talk about that a lot, but actually preparing for it, what kind of reception do you get for that? Because it's kind of another level of responsibility that I think people don't usually take on. Certainly I don't hear of a lot of people, taking a year to prepare for potentially having a child. And certainly I wonder what reception do you get from men, because again, I wonder how many people make that direct connection.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting when I really, really start going into it next year. But like men create sperm every 40 days, right? Like, well, you create sperm every day, but it comes out 40 days later. So they actually, if they do it like a detox period, let's say of 2 months or something like that, they have the ability to create very, very healthy sperm, knowing that information, right? Like, and so when I talk to my partner about this, he's like well aware that he's going to be doing detoxes next year. I'm like, I don't want any of that sperm until it's like up to my caliber. Like, because again, we might as well just make you as healthy as possible, make me as healthy as possible, and then put it together, right? Like, so I think there's a lot of education that needs to come about this. I think we need to talk about it more. And I think because so many couples are struggling with fertility, I think there's a lot of space for this in general.
And do you think people are struggling with fertility because they're not healthy enough? People are not healthy going into it. Do you think that's the cause of this kind of, you're right, we are seeing a lowered fertility?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about why else it would be happening. Like if we are experiencing highest infertility rates ever, I think it's what, is it 1 in 5 couples now? Like what has changed in the last 10, 20 years that has caused that? And there's so many factors, right? Like it's not just nutrition, it's also our lifestyle. We're on our phones all of the time, we're watching TV all of the time. How active are we actually being? How stressed out are we? You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that really play into that. And so that's why I think it's actually great to give yourself a year or even 6 months to kind of do an overhaul, because I would imagine that when you start trying and you're not successful, I would imagine it would be a very stressful time for any couple to go through. And to then start to try and be healthier during that period, the energy around it would be completely different. Like it would almost be like frantic and oh, let's be super healthy right now because we've been unsuccessful and now I'm ovulating. Okay, let's try. Like it would just be very stressful. So I think there is something beautiful about really just looking at it before even getting to that point.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, I think it's a brilliant initiative because also you have a goal, and if you're healthier and you're kind of functioning and your brain's better, you can deal with whatever comes along better too, So if you are facing challenges, you kind of set yourself up to be in a position where you can deal with it. So I do think it's brilliant, and I think it's a great thing to kind of have as a focus, because often it's easier to do something for someone else than for yourself as well. Often if you know that what you're doing is impacting potentially someone else, it kind of makes you up your game anyway. So for sure. And it just makes total sense.
And it's a bigger goal than yourself, right? Like sometimes, when I've had other health goals or other people have other health goals, whether it's like better skin or weight loss or something, those are great, but they're kind of done in vain a bit. And I'm fine to admit that. But like having a kid is like, whoa, like this is much bigger than this. This is like a big life goal. Do you know what I mean? So it hits differently, which means it's more personal and there's more emotions tied to it as well.
Brittany, will you bring me on when you convert to the next phase of biohacking parenting? Because that is an area where I can share a lot. I can share a lot just, based on mistakes. I have 20-year-olds now, and it is a whole different beast of parenting. It's like I'm no longer a parent. I am a peer, right? And like I look at them and I say, wow, you're really going to make that decision, huh? Okay. Like it's not my life, it's yours. But it's parenting, and even beyond that, like I think that what would be fascinating is sleep, because one of the things that everyone jokes about parenting is that you don't get any sleep. oh my God, I'll sleep with my babies too. Like, and it's true. Like people, like parents go crazy because they're not sleeping. And I think if we could teach parents how to sleep and also teach our babies how to sleep, like that's another topic too at some point.
Well,
Yeah.
it'll be healthy
Let me
so that
know
you can
when
deal with it,
you,
Russ. Yeah.
yeah. But I definitely think about that. I am so strict with my sleep routine. So I don't know how I'm going to deal with that at one point. But I'm sure the biohacking community will hook me up and tell me what to do. So
There's so much sleep training for children and babies that like I think that we have become way too kind to our children. And when you have a baby, you're just like, I'm going to do everything for this child. And that means sacrificing myself too. And I think there's something in there where there is no balance anymore. Like you're giving yourself to this child, but then these children, they grow up to be a little bit, spoiled, and they expect you to constantly be giving up your whole life for them. And then you're like, wait a second, like there's balance in here. Like, so parenting is another fun topic. So after your pregnancy, after
yeah.
the baby's born, I'll jump in and start doing some of the parenting stuff. But it is a great topic, and I think focusing on both male and female and sort of each holding responsibility and being accountable there. I've lots of friends who've gone through it, and the men get out and they're like, well, I guess I can't take a hot tub anymore. And it's this stupid stuff, like men being men, rather than just being like, this is a responsibility that we're going to take with our wives or our partners to make sure we make a healthy baby. Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's so much that men can do in terms of their hormones and healthy sperm for sure. And a lot of it isn't even that difficult. Like you said, right? Like it's wearing looser boxers. I don't even know what they're called, boxers versus briefs.
And there's boxer briefs too,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
confuse it all.
I don't know the difference, but like whatever one is less tight.
Yeah, boxers.
Yeah, boxers. Yeah, reducing hot tubs, also like certain supplements as well. But yeah, I think we're getting better. It's interesting though, like I feel like biohacking can be very male dominant. Whereas like wellness seems to be very woman dominant. Um, but I don't know. Even though biohacking is like male dominant, apparently, is what a lot of people say, I don't see a lot of content or companies coming out with solutions about creating healthier sperm, which is interesting.
Yeah, it really is. Sarah and I joke about this all the time. It's like sometimes you lean over and you're like, because we really tend to focus on female health. And again, I should not be talking for Sarah here, but like what happens is when you go into the male stuff, it gets very much like this is about efficiency and strength, and I'm gonna keep my testosterone levels and it's all, a lot of it is vanity, like you said, versus like, what can I do to improve my relationship with my partner at home? What can I do to, yeah, like be a better person and holistically, right? And I think that there is too much of that sometimes, where like you go in and you look at like biohacking, you look at the podcast, or you look at like the Instagrams, and it's all a bunch of cut dudes just like showing off their lats, and you're like, that's great, but like, what about my mental well-being, my stomach, like all those things that we try to focus on. So
Yeah,
it's true.
I think
Sarah, I don't
I
know.
think
Yeah.
I was going to say I think biohacking is starting to evolve a little bit more towards that. I mean, we had BioCurious Kayla on, who speaks a lot about how to biohack according to women's cycles, which was fascinating, and she had lots of new information. But also, it is like predominantly male. I think probably when you go to the events, it's definitely skewed more than half. I don't know if there's certainly a lot of female biohackers, but I think also that the kind of group is aging as it goes along. So of course this is now becoming a topic for the men who are within this kind of group or this kind of tribe. But I think, yeah, it's not something that I've seen spoken about, but certainly there is a push towards looking at family units and looking at families and looking at how you kind of create community in society. So there's definitely an awareness of, yes, you need to kind of have a healthy family in order to have a healthy life. It's, you're doing an N-1, you're looking at your own health, but you're doing it so that you can be available for other people. So I love the biohacking community for that, because I actually think they'll be very receptive to what you have to say, and I'm sure when you start to put your course and your content out, you will get a lot of takers for that, because I think people want to know what they can do. So from that point, are you going to be building a course, or how is that going to look for people? Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of couples who are going to be thinking, yeah, I'd like to know what to do to get ready. How are you going to kind of frame that?
I think right now it will be just content in terms of like content on social media, content on podcast. And I think I want to see the discussions that come from that before, creating a course or anything like that. Like I feel like I haven't had this discussion enough with enough people. I want to talk to experts and then really see what gets developed from it. Because I think, yeah, just from a business standpoint, it doesn't really make sense to produce something if you don't know this is actually going to fit with your market. This is actually going to fit with your audience. So I need to test it out first, play with it, and do research into it as well, right? Like read the books on it. I mean, I don't even know if there probably is, but like specific books made for male fertility, right? Like there's so many for women's fertility, but are there books out there that are for men, like preconception health for men? I don't know. I would hope so, but none of them come to mind. So
we can write one together.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who've been through it, and it's like it's a very strange thing because it becomes this mental thing of like, I'm not man enough, which is ridiculous. It's like there are things that you can do, and that's not a testament to whether you are virile enough. It's a testament of take care of yourself, do some of the things that you need to do, just like your partner is going to do on her side, right? And she's committed to it. And I think there's just something about getting prepared. I love that idea of taking 6 months or whatever time period you need to like get ready. Because a lot of times that just doesn't happen that way. It's like this month we're going to do it, and someone's dragging someone along to do it reluctantly versus like, we're going to do this together and partner. And then, even the pregnancy is healthier when you do it that way. There's a lot of mental health in there too.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Brittany, so what, obviously you're kind of just testing the water, but right now, what would be your advice to people of how they can start in kind of getting themselves into a better, not only physical state, but, emotional and mental state, kind of ready for something like this? What's your kind of top tips?
I think it's really important for both people to get tested even before you're planning to start. So I've had like all of my hormones tested. I've had like my egg reserve tested. My partner, he's done a couple of sperm tests where they look at like sperm count. It's like sperm count, motility, and there's one other thing. So you kind of like know what you're working with, right? And so even if your results come back and they're pretty good, I would still assess other things going on in your life. So for men, like, how's your mental health? How is your health in general? How's your weight? How's your gut health? Same with women. How's your mental health? How's your menstrual cycle? Is it regular? Are you having a lot of like PMS symptoms? I kind of just doing a big like overhaul and then being like, okay, this is where we are. This is where we want to be. So what do we need to do to get there? And there's a bunch of things that you can do. So looking at nutrition, really cleaning up your diet, removing processed food, removing things that come in packages, which is so difficult. Thinking about removing alcohol, other drugs. I don't know. You could take a look at that. Supplements that can help you as well. So various minerals, various vitamins, very good quality omegas as well. Like you need really healthy fat in both men and women. And just doing an overhaul like that. When it comes to detoxing, I think this can be really helpful as well. Even if it's light detoxing, as in like a sauna twice a week, would be very helpful. I think that we will probably do something a bit more intense than that, but also I'm a biohacker, so it's like very different than probably what I would recommend to everybody. But it's kind of this idea, I guess, of like how optimally healthy can you be for where you are in your life right now? And how do you maintain that? And that's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult question. So something to think about though.
And there's so much that happens after, right after pregnancy with postpartum and things that probably as you're addressing that, I wonder if there's a relation to being mentally healthy as you're going into pregnancy to what happens post-pregnancy, for both, uh, for both partners there. So it's a great topic. Please, let us know. I think one thing we want to do is really help you and get more listeners to your podcast too, as you're launching it. So super exciting stuff. It's a great topic.
Yeah, definitely. And as I do more research and talk more about it, I'll come back on here, and you can come on mine too.
Of course.
And maybe
Beautiful.
tell us where people can find you in case they want to look you up now after the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on social media at Biohacking Brittany. My podcast is called Biohacking with Brittany, biohackingbrittany.com. It's like all the same name for everything, basically. And yeah, that's basically, I think I'm most active on Instagram, I would say. So if you have any questions, yeah, message me and I can help you. I answer a lot of DMs. So
that's super cool. That's brilliant. Well, we'll definitely put that up, and we normally come and do a little review of the podcast, so we'll do that. So we'll definitely point people in your direction, because I think it's very cool what you're doing. It's interesting. We started out with leaky gut, and then we kind of went into the hormonal, and then your next thing, because I think that's how it goes. You start off with addressing your basic health, and then you realize there's always somewhere new to go. You can always go from the baseline of where you are to better. So that's a brilliant example of that. So that's great. And we wish you all the best with it. I mean, it'd be exciting to see where you are next year when you kind of make that choice. So yes, thank you so much.
thank you so much. Are you going to any of the biohacking conferences next year?
I'm going to be in Austin, if you're going to go to the Biohacking Congress in Austin. So that's the first one, I think. That's February.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to the Biohacking Summit in October in Amsterdam.
Oh, yes. I definitely go to that one too, because I'm here. It's for me, it's just a couple of hour train ride. Yeah, for sure. So I look forward to meeting you in person. That will be great.
Yeah, that'll be great. Awesome. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. Take care, Brittany.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Breaking the gray.